China. The Soviet Union even had access to better technology and AI toys. This country has been making quite the headlines lately, from being one of the most fastest growing economies to landing a spacecraft on the far side of the moon. With every year, it is becoming more and more prevalent in the geopolitical world. But it's not just famous for its economical growth, it's also infamous for interpreting a certain science fiction novel as an instruction manual. And what I'm talking about here, of course, is China's totalitarian government. And in 2014, China proposed to implement a system straight out of Black Mirror, that is, the social credit score system. If you've watched the episode Nosedive from Black Mirror, this will sound very familiar to you. In other words, the Chinese social credit system, or SCS, is a credit system like we have in the West. Except in this one, it tracks a lot more than just loans. It's going to track from how many video games you play to what your friends post online. It then compiles a score out of all this data, which then can be used to show how trustworthy you are to the state, and how good of a citizen you are. If you do good things such as donating to charity or doing community work, points will be added to your score. This can lead to benefits like having an easier time taking out a loan, or discounts on train tickets and etc. However, if you do bad things such as jaywalking or not paying your bills in time, points can be deducted from your score. This can lead to limitations like not being able to buy plane tickets, or having a lower chance of being employed. Or as the government said, those who are deemed unworthy will not be able to move a single step. At this current moment, this has not been fully implemented at a government level and is voluntary. It has been tested in several cities in China, like Beijing, some by local governments and some by private companies. However, China promises to fully implement the SCS at a national level by the year 2020. So where will China get all the information to rate their citizens from? Well, to understand that, we'll need to know more about Chinese society. As we all know, the Chinese internet is rather limited compared to that of the West, so instead of having billions of different apps, they have around 2 mega apps and do pretty much everything. And those are WeChat and Alipay. In cities like Shenzhen, physical money and credit cards have become obsolete, and everything is paid via phone or QR code. Chinese people primarily use these two apps to complete their purchases. This, coupled with the sheer amount of users, makes it a total data goldmine for Alipay and WeChat. It is then unsurprising that these companies have been rumoured to sell the data to the government. Since nearly all of the online world is somehow linked to those two apps, it is very easy for the government to vacuum up data to then score the citizens. Now you might be thinking, why? Why does the Chinese government want to implement the system so badly? And why are the Chinese people letting this happen? In an interview done by AsianBoss, most of the people interviewed didn't seem to care. A lot of their reasons were that China has a problem with trust in their citizens, and the fact that the government already knows everything about them anyway, so it doesn't matter. And to be honest, I kinda have to agree with them there. China does have many problems with trust in the country. For example, pollution, food scandals, and employers not paying their workers. And multiply that with the fact that they have a population of over 1 billion, and you get a population that's very hard to control. Not only that, but China doesn't even really have a credit system in the first place. So in China's case, this system may be justified. However, I don't think it is. It isn't that they give each citizen a score that's worrying, but what they actually use to score you. In the SCS, they plan to gather data about 5 things. The first 2 are one's credit history and their ability to keep promises, like for example, keeping their side to a deal. The next 3 are the ones that are raising quite a few red flags, that is, personal information, behaviour, and relationships. I will now go through each one and explain why they're bad, if that wasn't obvious already. The first variable is personal information. The SCS will rank your score depending on how open you are to giving out your private information. It doesn't take a genius to realise how this is a massive issue for privacy. The old saying goes, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear. But the reason people hide their private information isn't because they're all criminals, but it's because of, privacy? The fact that guarding your own private information can have your points deducted makes the Chinese population much more transparent with the government. But then again, the government probably already knows everything about them anyway, so this variable may not be that much of a concern. The next variable is behaviour, and this is one of the bad ones. Since the SCS is rumoured to be closely linked to Alipay and WeChat, the apps will be used to track the people's shopping habits, what they post online, and what they view online. This is where the SCS begins to greatly differ from a Western version. Not only is it just plain creepy, but it also destroys the argument that China has always needed a financial credit system. This has nothing to do with finance. I don't think the branding of clothing you buy can show whether you'll pay back a loan or not. It has nothing to do with safety either. In my opinion, I believe this is just Chinese governments using another method of control to achieve totalitarianism. This system will help prevent people from doing things online that pose a danger to the state. and what that danger is, the government does not define. This has already happened, and the system isn't even fully running yet. Liu Hu was a Chinese journalist who reported about censorship and corruption in the government. He then was blacklisted and found himself in a list of dishonest persons. Once blacklisted, he could not buy plane tickets, take out a loan, or buy property. There was no file, no police warrant, no official advance notification. They just cut me off from the things I was once entitled to. What's really scary is there's nothing you can do about it. You can report to no one. You are stuck in the middle of nowhere. It's also speculated that once your score drops, it's an inevitable downward spiral, with difficult recovery. The final variable is what I think to be the worst one, and that is personal relationships. In other words, if your friends and family have a bad score, this will affect your score too. This is a genius way of maintaining control of a population. It stops you from doing anything against the state purely out of guilt that you can ruin your family and friends' lives. And this works much better in China because of its culture. Compared to the West, Chinese people tend to have more of a collective mindset, so the opinion of the majority matters a lot there. It runs on a Bolshevikism after all. The majority is the priority. This is an excellent way to prevent revolutions and political uprising. It prevents people grouping together, since the mere association with someone who is believed to be an enemy of the state lowers one's score. This can also create isolationism. If you have a bad score, no one will want to interact with you. You will be a social outcast. It is a form of public shaming, and the government already does that. In some cities, if you are caught jaywalking by facial recognition cameras, you will be then displayed on a public wall of shame, as if it's some kind of ghost train at a theme park. All of this, and the government didn't have to lift a finger, all done by the people. Overall, this is an almost perfect way to control society, through public shaming and isolationism. And by control, I mean control like a settings page on an app. Your country's population is too high? Just lower the score of people with many kids. Need more engineers? Just raise the score of people who are studying engineering. Society will become like Play-Doh in the hands of the government. One of the main messages in George Orwell's 1984 is that once a truly dystopian government sets up, it ain't going anytime soon. This is the case for the SCS. Once it's set up, the shame and guilt will stop any opposition from forming. The goal is to make society do the shaming and controlling first. Then only after that can the government implement the system nationally. All these trial runs are to get people used to it and think of it as the norm. So when it finally reaches national level, the Chinese people won't see much of a difference. So why do I care so much about this even though I live in the West and under a democracy? Well, to make people aware of how totalitarianism arises. In my opinion, the first signs of dictatorship isn't in the government, but in the people. When Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, everyone didn't suddenly become Nazis. They already had a Nazi mindset in the first place. My point is that the mindset of a society is what lets totalitarian governments take control. The dictator never forces himself into power. The people first give up their individuality in a form of groupthink for a party and let the dictator take power. And once they realize what they've done, it's too late. A similar thing is happening in the West, especially on the internet. Nowadays, people tend to think of themselves more as part of a group than an individual. They go as far as letting a political party be a part of their identity. Any criticism against their idea or party is taken as a personal attack. Any opposing or slightly controversial ideas get shamed en masse online, all in the name of outrage. Twitter comes to mind, and this applies to both sides of the political spectrum. Oh, you were just a privileged racist Nazi. Well, you were just a fat stupid feminist. It's all the same thing. It's just people making politics a part of their identity and then repeating the same old garbage as we've said billions of times. Even if you think the idea is good or agree with it, if it comes from an opposing side, then it must be bad. And I'm in no way saying that we're about to enter dictatorship like China. The West is far from that. My point is that no one thinks for themselves anymore, but as part of some hive mind. Individuality has been traded for conformity and censorship. If we continue to participate in groupthink and silence new ideas that challenge the conventional way of thinking, then are we no better than China?